The day after my divorce, my ex-husband's secretary called me and said 4 words that hollowed out my chest. "Your children are at risk." I remember standing in my kitchen when she said it, my hands still wet from rinsing a coffee mug, water dripping down my wrist, the morning sun slicing across the tiles. It should have been an ordinary moment. Just a quiet morning after the loud ending of my marriage. But her voice, soft, shaky, almost guilty, split that morning into before and after. "Emily, please. You need to come alone," she whispered. There was a tremor in her breathing, the kind that tells you someone is looking over their shoulder while they talk. I tried to swallow, but my throat felt stiff. "Come where?" "Our office. Today. It's important. It's about something he hid from you, something that could hurt your kids." For a few seconds, I didn't hear anything except the ticking of the wall clock. That slow, steady rhythm suddenly felt threatening, like it was counting down to something. My ex-husband, Daniel, had kept many secrets. That was the reason we were standing in a courthouse just the day before, signing our names on papers that felt both heavy and merciful. But our children, our 9-year-old twins, Lily and Lucas, they were the one place he had never crossed a line. Or so I believed. "Please," she whispered again. "Just come. And don't tell him I called." When I finally lowered the phone, the kitchen felt different, like the air had thickened. I looked out the window at the backyard where the twins' shoes were still scattered from yesterday. Lily's sparkly sneakers. Lucas's muddy ones. It was strange how the smallest things could suddenly terrify you. I wiped my hands on a dish towel, trying to steady my breathing. I told myself it was probably nothing dramatic. Maybe a forgotten document. Maybe something financial. Daniel wasn't dangerous. Thoughtless, yes. Selfish, yes. But dangerous? Still, no matter how much I tried to rationalize it, that one phrase kept echoing like a distant siren. "Your children are at risk." Before everything fell apart, our home had been filled with smaller, gentler sounds. The clatter of breakfast bowls. The low hum of the dishwasher. The laughter of 2 siblings who believed their parents were unshakable. I used to think the strength of a marriage was measured in big gestures, anniversaries, vacations, promises whispered on nights when the world felt kind. But in truth, the strength was in the ordinary moments. The way he used to kiss the top of my head before leaving for work. The way he'd hush the twins when he saw I needed an extra hour of sleep. The way he'd touch my elbow when guiding me through a crowded room. Those small gestures had disappeared long before I dared to admit the marriage was dying. I remember the first morning I sensed something was wrong. It was subtle, the smell of burnt toast because he'd forgotten it in the toaster, the way he kept checking his phone, the way he avoided my eyes. Marriage doesn't break in a single moment. It unravels, thread by thread, until one day you notice you're holding a handful of frayed ends. I had tried to hold things together. For the twins. For the sake of the life we'd built. For the woman I used to be before bills and responsibilities hardened parts of me I didn't know could harden. But when secrets entered a home, they didn't walk, they crawled, slowly poisoning everything. In the months leading to our divorce, Daniel became a stranger who slept on the other side of the bed. He'd started coming home late. His shirt smelled faintly of perfume that wasn't mine. His patience wore thin. His voice became clipped, defensive. There were nights I lay awake, listening to him breathe, wondering if the man who promised forever still lived somewhere beneath the exhaustion in his face. But I never imagined he was hiding something dangerous. That word, risk, kept stinging me like a splinter I couldn't remove. When the divorce was finalized, I felt grief, yes, but I also felt relief. Like I was finally allowed to breathe the kind of air that didn't cut when it entered my lungs. I thought the worst was over. I was wrong. By early afternoon, I stood outside the office building where Daniel had spent the last 6 years working. It looked emptier than I remembered, its tinted windows catching only thin, pale reflections of the overcast sky. There were no cars in the parking lot. No voices. No footsteps. Just silence. I hesitated on the front steps. A gust of wind lifted my hair and sent a faint metallic rattle through the loose sign hanging above the door. Something about that sound, lonely, almost pleading, made me shiver. I texted the secretary, whose name was Anna. "I'm here." A moment later, my phone buzzed. The side door. "It's unlocked. Come in and go straight to his office." "I'm in there. Hurry." Her short, Rushed sentences tightened the knot in my stomach. Inside, the building was dim. Only a few hallway lights flickered on, casting long shadows over the tiled floor. The air smelled faintly of old coffee and disinfectant, like a place that had been cleaned after everyone had already given up on coming back. My heels clicked softly as I moved through the corridor. With each step, something inside me whispered that I shouldn't be here, that I should turn back. But curiosity and dread had a way of pulling me forward, even when logic begged me not to go. Daniel's office was at the end of the hall. The door was slightly ajar. I pushed it gently. "Anna," I whispered. The office was empty. A faint thud echoed somewhere behind me, soft, deliberate, familiar. Then, a cough. Not just any cough. His cough. The one I'd heard in dark rooms, early mornings, late nights. A deep, habitual throat clearing he always did before speaking. My heart slammed against my ribs. I froze. Because if Daniel was here, then why had Anna told me to come alone? And where was she? That cough, low, rough, unmistakably his, echoed through the narrow hallway behind me. For a moment, I couldn't move. My fingers tightened around the strap of my purse, nails digging into the leather. My breath held itself, suspended somewhere between panic and denial. I turned slowly. The hallway was empty. Quiet. Still. But I knew what I heard. The familiarity of that sound was carved into years of shared mornings and tired nights. I stepped backward into the office until the door touched my shoulder. My throat felt dry, but I whispered anyway, "Daniel." No answer. Just the faint hum of an old air vent overhead. Moments later, I backed out of the office and walked toward the intersection of the hall, every step cautious, like the floor might give way beneath me. I glanced left, then right. Both hallways stretched empty, lined with closed doors, a reminder of a workplace that was once full of voices and now felt abandoned. The cough didn't come again. It almost frightened me more that it didn't. On the drive home, my hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles whitened. The building had looked deserted. No Anna. No Daniel. No explanation. It felt like a prank, except Anna didn't sound like someone playing games. And Daniel, he wasn't the type to orchestrate something like this. At least, not the Daniel I once knew. I told myself I would call Anna later, maybe she'd explain. Maybe she'd panicked. Maybe she never meant to send the last message. Maybe she never sent it at all. But the fear in her voice, that wasn't nothing. Back home, the house felt too quiet. The twins were at my sister's for the weekend, giving me a chance to settle after the emotional storm of the divorce. Their absence made the house feel hollow, like a shell without warmth. I walked into the living room and sat on the edge of the couch. The divorce papers were still on the coffee table where I'd dropped them the night before. His signature sat beside mine, two names that used to sit together on holiday cards and school forms, now divided by a bold black line. Just yesterday, we'd stood across from each other in a courthouse hallway. Daniel didn't look like the man I married. His hair was thinner at the temples, shoulders stiff from stress or guilt. He avoided my eyes the entire time. That hurt more than it should have. After everything, I thought he'd at least meet my gaze one last time. But he signed without a word. And just like that, 15 years of our lives were reduced to 4 sheets of paper. People always assume the beginning of a marriage is the most magical part. For us, it was somewhere in the middle, when life had worn away the polish of newness but revealed something steadier underneath. I used to love watching him cook on Sunday mornings. He'd hum off-key to some old rock song while making pancakes. The twins would sit at the counter with their elbows on the marble, arguing over who got the first one. Daniel would pretend to be offended. "No faith in your father," he'd say, sliding 2 plates in front of them. "Good pancakes take time." He was gentle then. Steady. A man who cared deeply, even if he didn't always show it. But stress changed him. His job demanded longer hours. His boss added pressure. Mistakes were punished harshly. And somewhere in that growing fog of expectation, I began losing pieces of him. First the small gestures, then the conversations, then the truth. We started living like 2 shadows crossing paths in the same house. A marriage held together by routines but emptied of connection. Still, I didn't believe he was dangerous. Not truly. Even when I suspected him of cheating, I never once feared for our children's safety. So why would Anna? Anxiety gnawed at me until I couldn't sit still. I picked up my phone and dialed her number. 1 ring. 2 rings. 3. Voicemail box. I hung up and dialed again. And again. By the 4th call, my hands were trembling. I got up and walked into the kitchen, needing something familiar to ground me. The smell of coffee grounds. The soft click of the refrigerator. The hum of the dishwasher. I reached for a glass of water and steadied myself against the counter. Then my phone buzzed. A message from Anna. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have involved you. Please forget I called. My stomach dropped. Forget? No explanation? No reassurance about the kids? Nothing? I typed back quickly. Are my children safe? The bubble on the screen blinked, then vanished. She was typing. Then she wasn't. Then typing again. Then it disappeared. Then nothing. Minutes passed. I stared at the screen, waiting for a reply, but none came. The silence felt deliberate. Terrifying. Like someone had stopped her mid-sentence. Like someone was watching her phone. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying the cough in the hallway. The empty office. Anna's fear. Her final message. And then something else surfaced, something I hadn't let myself think about in months. About 2 months before the divorce, I found Daniel in the garage late at night. The lights were off. The door was slightly open. I thought maybe he was fixing something. But the way he was sitting in the dark, hunched over, elbows on his knees, it looked like a man coming apart. He didn't notice me at first. When he finally looked up, he startled like he'd been caught doing something he shouldn't. He wiped his face quickly, too quickly. I pretended not to see the tear marks. I asked if he was okay. He said he was fine. He was lying. But I didn't push. Because by then, I'd learned that asking too many questions only led to more silence. Now, lying in my bed with the shadows stretching long across the ceiling, I wondered if that night in the garage had been the beginning of something darker. Something big enough, dangerous enough, that someone felt the need to warn me about our children. And someone else, someone familiar, might have been following me into an empty building. The next morning, I woke before the sun. My body felt heavy, like I'd been holding my breath all night. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the faint outline of the curtains. The world outside was still dark, but my mind was spinning, bright, loud, restless. I checked my phone immediately. No new messages. Nothing from Anna. Nothing from Daniel. Just silence. I moved through the house quietly, as if the walls might break if I made too much noise. It was strange, the way fear could change how you walked, how you breathed, how you existed inside your own home. In the kitchen, I made coffee but didn't drink it. I just held the mug between my palms for warmth, watching the steam curl upward like it was trying to escape. My eyes drifted to the refrigerator, the place where school papers, drawings, and family photos lived. There was one picture from last Christmas where we all stood in front of the tree. Daniel had his arm around me, but his smile. I saw it differently now. It wasn't joy. It wasn't even comfort. It was a man trying too hard to look normal. A man hiding something. I set the coffee down and reached for the photo, finally seeing the strain in his eyes. The tightness in his jaw. The way his hand on my shoulder didn't feel warm, even in the picture. I felt a small shiver work up my spine. Had I missed something? Something dangerous? Around 9 a.m., my phone buzzed. My sister Barbara messaged. Kids miss you. Everything okay? I almost told her everything, but something inside me stopped. Fear makes you protective in strange ways. If there was something dangerous happening, dragging family into it felt wrong, maybe even reckless. So I sent back. I'm fine. I'll pick them up this afternoon. Her reply came instantly. Love you. Just checking. I put the phone down, but a thought hit me hard. What if the kids weren't safe with me? What if Anna had meant something immediate? Something already in motion? The panic in my chest grew tight and sharp. I grabbed my keys and drove over to Barbara's house anyway, needing to see Lily and Lucas with my own eyes. On the way, the wind slapped against my car windows, the sky dull and gray. I forced myself to breathe slowly, counting to 4 like the therapist had taught me during the last months of the marriage. In through the nose. Out through the mouth. But my heart didn't calm. When I pulled up, Barbara opened the front door before I even knocked. "You're pale," she said, narrowing her eyes. "What's wrong?" I shook my head. "Just tired." She didn't believe me, but she didn't push. She stepped aside so I could see into the living room. The twins were on the floor building a city out of Legos, Lucas focused, tongue poking out in concentration, while Lily talked non-stop, explaining why her part needed more pink and more sparkles. Nothing looked out of place. Nothing looked dangerous. My shoulders loosened slightly. "Do they seem okay?" I asked, voice softer than I intended. Barbara raised a brow. "They're kids. They're loud and messy and fine." Relief washed over me, warm and temporary. I stayed for nearly an hour, watching them, memorizing their faces. Every laugh. Every gesture. Every normal, beautiful thing. But normal can be deceiving. Normal can be the mask life wears before it shatters. When we got home, I tried to pretend the day was ordinary. I made the twins grilled cheese. Lucas asked for extra pickles. Lily spilled her juice. I cleaned the counter twice. Laundry hummed in the next room. On the surface, life looked simple. But my mind kept drifting, to the empty office, the cough, Anna's silence. Something wasn't adding up. After lunch, while the twins played in their rooms, I walked into Daniel's old office at home, a room he hadn't fully packed yet. A few boxes sat in the corner. The desk was half empty. A single lamp remained, the cord dangling uselessly. I stood there for a long moment, my heartbeat thudding in my ears. I opened the desk drawers one by one. Mostly empty. A few pens. A receipt for a gas station. A broken stapler he refused to throw away. Then, in the bottom drawer, I found something that made my throat tighten. A small notebook. Black cover. Worn edges. Not his style. Daniel never kept journals. He barely wrote grocery lists. But the notebook looked used, pages bent, corners soft from being flipped through. I sat in his chair and slowly opened it. The first few pages were empty. Then, handwriting. Not his. Not mine. A woman's handwriting. Precise. Neat. Slanted slightly to the right. My pulse quickened. The first line read, "Daniel, this is everything we talked about. You said you wanted proof. I hope this is enough." I blinked hard. Proof? Of what? And who was she? I turned the page. There were lists. Names. Numbers. Dates. None of them meant anything to me. But the more I flipped, the stranger the entries became. Some were scratched out violently. Some had question marks beside them. Some were circled in red ink. Then I reached a page that made my breath catch in my throat. A list of initials. Only initials. But two of them stabbed through me like needles. LF. LF. Lily Forster. Lucas Forster. My twins. My hands began to shake. Someone had written their initials in a notebook hidden in Daniel's desk. Someone who wasn't me. Someone who wasn't him. Someone who had met with him. Someone giving him proof of something. My blood went cold. I closed the notebook quickly, my heart beating so hard it hurt. I lifted my phone with trembling fingers and called Anna again. Straight to voicemail. I tried a second time. Nothing. Then a third attempt. And this time, the voicemail greeting cut in immediately, but with something new. The greeting had changed. Before, it was Anna's soft voice saying, "Hi, this is Anna. Leave a message." Now, the greeting was silent. Completely silent. No voice. Just one beep. Then the line went dead. A knot formed in my stomach so tight I had to sit down. Anna wasn't scared yesterday. She was terrified. And whatever she tried to warn me about, was connected to Daniel. Connected to the notebook in my hands. Connected to my children. The twins started arguing in their room about who owned a specific Lego piece. A normal sound. A comforting sound. But I felt anything but safe. Because something was unraveling. Something Daniel had buried. Something Anna had discovered. Something that someone didn't want me to know. And I was starting to realize. The cough in the hallway yesterday might not have been a coincidence. It might have been a warning. A shadow behind me. A presence following me. Something telling me. This wasn't over. Not even close. For the rest of the afternoon, I moved through the house like a ghost, quiet, hyper-aware, listening for every sound. The twins were fine, blissfully unaware of the storm gathering just beyond the edges of their childhood. I kept the notebook close, hidden beneath a folded sweater in my bedroom. Every time I thought about opening it again, my stomach twisted. Those initials, their initials, branded into the page by a stranger's hand. I needed answers. And there was only one person left who could give me any. Daniel. But I wasn't ready, not yet. Not without understanding more. So once the twins were tucked in bed, I returned to the office. I shut the door carefully and turned on the desk lamp, the soft yellow light settling around me like a spotlight. The house felt too quiet, too still. The kind of silence that made you feel watched. I pulled out the notebook again. This time, I forced myself to read slowly, line by line, even when my heart hammered against my ribs. Some pages were like fragments of overheard conversations, short, cryptic notes. He said they're getting close. She doesn't know yet. Children aren't supposed to be involved. I told him this is too dangerous. Each sentence felt like a cold hand on my spine. Dangerous? Children? My children? Then I found a folded sheet tucked between the pages. My fingers shook as I opened it. It was a printed email. An email Daniel had clearly tried to hide. It was from a man named Robert Hale. A name I didn't recognize. Subject line, update regarding the investigation. My eyes darted across the words. We are making progress, but the leak is getting worse. If anyone finds out what we've uncovered, it won't just be the company on the line. Keep your family separate from this. Especially the twins. My skin prickled. Company leak? Investigation? Family? Twins? I read the words again, slower this time, feeling each one land heavy in my chest. Keep your family separate. Especially the twins. A cold, nauseating realization began to bloom. Daniel hadn't been distant because of another woman. He hadn't been sneaking around because he didn't love me anymore. He had been hiding something bigger. Something so big he tried to keep it out of our home. But someone else, someone like Anna, clearly believed that danger had already crossed our threshold. I read the email again and again until the words blurred. Then, at the very bottom, in a smaller font, was a line I'd missed. If anything happens to me, she'll need protection. I froze. She. Who was she? Was that Anna? Me? Lily? My throat closed. I closed the notebook, my pulse thundering, when I heard something outside the door. A soft whisper of movement. A floorboard creaking. I held my breath, waiting. Then, another sound. A faint knock. Not on the office door, but on the front door of the house. At this hour? I stood up slowly, every muscle tight. My footsteps were light as I moved down the hallway. The house felt darker than usual, like the shadows had thickened. When I reached the door, I looked through the peephole. My breath caught. It was Daniel. He stood on the porch, hair disheveled, eyes hollow, wearing the same jacket he'd worn to the courthouse yesterday. Rain spattered around him even though the sky had been dry minutes earlier. He looked like a man who hadn't slept. A man hunted by something I couldn't yet see. I hesitated, then opened the door only a few inches. What are you doing here? I whispered, voice barely steady. He swallowed hard. Emily, we need to talk. His voice was rough, desperate. No, I said sharply. Not after you. Please, he cut in. It's about the kids. Everything inside me tensed. What about them? He looked over his shoulder into the darkness before whispering, we're not safe talking here. Let me in. I wanted to slam the door. I wanted to scream. But behind his exhaustion, behind the guilt, behind the man who had let our marriage rot, there was something else. Fear. Real fear. Fear that didn't lie. I opened the door the rest of the way. He stepped inside, dripping water onto the hardwood floor. He locked the door behind him, then leaned his forehead against it for a long moment, exhaling shakily. What's going on, Daniel? I asked, my voice low but trembling. He turned to look at me, eyes bloodshot. I didn't want you involved. I tried to keep everything away from you and the kids. That's why I kept things from you, why I pulled away. My chest tightened. You could have told me. He shook his head, stepping closer. I couldn't. The less you knew, the safer you were. His words made me feel like the room had tilted slightly. Safer. Safer from what? What happened to Anna? I demanded. He stiffened. His jaw clenched. What did she tell you? That the kids might be at risk. Daniel closed his eyes, inhaling sharply. Then she knows too much, he whispered. A chill crept over my skin. What does that mean? I asked. Where is she now? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he ran a hand through his damp hair, pacing like a man trying to outwalk his own fear. She shouldn't have called you, he finally said. That's not an answer, I snapped. His gaze met mine, haunted. Emily, someone inside the company is doing something illegal. Something dangerous. I was helping expose it. And now everything's spiraling. Illegal? What kind of illegal? He swallowed hard. Financial crimes. Fraud. Laundering. But it goes deeper than that. People have disappeared. The walls seemed to close in. Disappeared? You should have told me, I whispered. He shook his head violently. If they knew I told you, you and the kids. His voice broke. A tear slid down my cheek without permission. He stepped closer. I messed up. Not just our marriage. Everything. But I'm begging you to listen to me now. I couldn't speak. All I could do was listen to the thundering of my heart. He looked into my eyes and whispered the words that shattered me. Someone knows Anna contacted you. And they followed you yesterday. My breath vanished. Followed me. The empty building. The missing secretary. The cough. I felt the room spin. Who? I managed to whisper. Daniel's face drained of color. I don't know who they are, he said. But they're closer than you think. Before I could respond, a sudden sharp sound rang out. A metallic rattle. At the back door. Both of us froze. Daniel whispered, they're here. The metallic rattle echoed through the house again, louder this time. My pulse surged, every nerve alive with fear. The twins were upstairs, blissfully unaware, but I could hear their faint laughter carried down the stairwell, a fragile reminder of why I couldn't let panic take over. Daniel took a step toward me, his eyes sharp now, scanning the shadows. Emily, stay calm. We need to move, quietly. I nodded, though my hands trembled. I grabbed the notebook, cradling it against my chest like a shield. It had become our roadmap, proof of a danger I didn't fully understand, yet had to confront. He led me through the living room to the side door, the one that led to the backyard. The rattle came again, followed by a faint scraping sound. Someone was trying to get in. I forced myself to breathe slowly, counting each inhale, each exhale. Fear clawed at my chest, but I couldn't let it show. Panic wouldn't save anyone. Daniel whispered, the garage. There's a tunnel you don't know about. Emergency exit, kids aren't here, so it's safe to use. Follow me. I hesitated. Tunnel. Not time for questions, he said. His voice was low, urgent. Trust me. We moved quickly, silently, stepping over the scattered laundry and empty coffee cups. The back door led to a small utility area I rarely noticed. Behind a panel, Daniel pressed a latch. The wall shuddered as it slid open, revealing a narrow, dim passage. I swallowed hard, the smell of dust and cold stone hitting me immediately. I stepped inside. Darkness wrapped around us like a heavy blanket. Keep the notebook safe, Daniel whispered. It might be the only evidence that keeps them from getting you. I nodded, gripping the notebook as though it contained the lifeblood of our family. We moved through the tunnel, each step careful. I could hear my heartbeat, loud and echoing. Somewhere above, the rattle had stopped. But the tension in the air told me it wasn't over. At the end of the tunnel, we emerged into a dimly lit alley behind the office building, the same building where I had heard that cough the day before. Daniel kept low, scanning the area. They can't follow us here, he said. Not easily. But we need to get to my friend, Robert. He's helping expose the people behind this. I nodded, though fear still burned in my chest. My mind raced: Anna, the notebook, the hidden criminals, Daniel, and now me, and the twins. Everything was tangled, everything urgent, and I had no control over any of it. As we reached the car parked at the end of the alley, Daniel opened the door. "Get in. Fast." I climbed in, heart pounding. He slid in beside me and started the engine. The tires squealed as we pulled into the street, wet from an earlier rain. I dared to glance at him. His face was pale, tight with tension. "How long has this been going on?" I asked. "Months," he admitted quietly. I tried to handle it myself, but the deeper I went, the more dangerous it became. "Anna found out before she should have. That's why she contacted you." "Then where is she now?" I demanded. Daniel shook his head. "I don't know. And that's what scares me the most." The rest of the drive was tense, silent except for the occasional sigh or the hum of the engine. My mind was spinning. Financial crimes. Investigations. Threats. The kids. Anna. Everything we thought was ordinary had been hiding a shadow. Finally, Daniel pulled into a secluded lot. A black SUV waited, and a tall man stepped out, face shadowed under a hood. "Robert," Daniel called softly. The man nodded. He opened the back door, and we got inside quickly. Once inside, the doors locked, and I finally allowed myself to look at Daniel. "Why didn't you tell me?" I whispered. "I wanted to protect you," he said, voice cracking slightly. "I couldn't risk the twins, or you, getting caught in the crossfire. I thought I could handle it all alone." I shook my head. "And Anna?" He closed his eyes briefly. "I don't know. And that's my fault too. She's smart. She knew too much. But she might be in danger right now." The SUV moved silently through the city streets. Outside, the world was unaware of the storm surrounding us. Cars driving, people walking dogs, the smell of coffee wafting from a corner cafe. Inside, my life had been turned upside down, and every second counted. Robert leaned forward. "Daniel told me everything. We need to make sure Emily and the kids are safe first, then we handle the others involved. Whoever they are, they're organized, dangerous, and clever. And they won't hesitate." I gripped the notebook tighter. "And my children?" "They're not in immediate danger," Robert said. "But someone is watching. You can't go home yet." Panic gripped me again. I thought of Lily and Lucas, tucked into bed just hours ago, unaware of the storm that had erupted around them. I felt my chest tighten, and tears burned in my eyes. Daniel reached over and gently touched my hand. "I'll fix this. I promise. I won't let them hurt you, or the kids." I wanted to believe him. I needed to. There was no other choice. The SUV turned down a side street, disappearing into the shadows. I felt a cold weight settle over me. Someone had betrayed us. Someone had wanted to hurt us. But now, for the first time, I wasn't alone. And that knowledge, fragile as it was, gave me the courage to face whatever came next. Because fear can paralyze, but action can protect what you love most. The next few days blurred into a haze of tension, secrecy, and whispered plans. We weren't just hiding from someone, we were actively trying to uncover them. Daniel, Robert, and I worked in small bursts of controlled chaos, exchanging information, piecing together emails, bank statements, and phone records. The more we uncovered, the more disturbing it became. The people behind the fraud weren't amateurs. They had a network, connections in unexpected places. They were willing to manipulate, threaten, even eliminate anyone who got too close. And Anna, God Anna, I realized she hadn't been reckless. She had been trying to protect me. To protect the kids. And now, she was missing. Finally, Robert spoke up one evening as we sat in a cramped office space that Robert had secured for us. The lights were low, the hum of computers filling the air. "Emily," he said, turning toward me, "we have enough evidence now to expose them. The company, the fraud, the threats, all of it." My hands shook. "Expose them how?" "Publicly," he said. "Through the authorities. Press. Everything. Once we do this, they won't be able to hide. They'll face legal consequences, and the ones who threatened your family won't have a leg to stand on." Daniel ran a hand through his hair. It has to be done carefully. If they realize we're going public too soon, it could endanger Anna or even the twins. Timing is everything. I swallowed hard. Fear was still there, yes, but now it was mixed with determination. We couldn't let fear control us. Not anymore. The morning of the public announcement, I felt my chest tighten. I'd barely slept. My mind kept wandering back to the twins, alone at Barbara's house, safe for now, but only for now. I hugged the notebook to my chest like a lifeline and took a deep breath. Daniel and Robert were already in the conference room, going over the final details. Lawyers on call, press statements ready, evidence compiled into neat folders. Everything was meticulous, precise. You ready? Daniel asked quietly as I entered. I nodded, though my hands trembled. As ready as I'll ever be. The doors opened to a small group of reporters. Cameras clicked, microphones rose. The statement was short but powerful. Daniel read it first, acknowledging the investigation, the financial crimes, and the threats, but emphasizing the importance of protecting innocent lives, especially children. Then it was my turn. I felt the eyes on me, curious, skeptical, expectant. I held the notebook tightly, glanced at Daniel, and spoke clearly. Today, we reveal the truth. People may have tried to hide their actions, but justice will prevail. My family, and the families of everyone involved, deserve safety. No child should ever feel threatened because of adult decisions. We will not allow fear to control our lives anymore. The room remained silent for a beat longer than comfortable. Then flashes of cameras. Whispers. Questions shouted from the back. It was done. And I felt relieved. Within hours, the fallout began. The people responsible for the fraud and threats faced immediate legal action. Some were arrested. Others suspended. And the company, once thought untouchable, began to crumble under public scrutiny. Daniel faced questions about his involvement, too. He hadn't hidden his efforts to expose the criminals, but his secrecy in protecting the family raised eyebrows. I stood beside him through it all, feeling the complicated mix of emotions, betrayal, anger, love, relief. And then news came from Anna. She had been hiding, following safety protocols, and had avoided being discovered. She called me herself, voice trembling but alive. You did it, she whispered. You protected them. You protected the kids. Her voice broke. You're incredible. I wanted to cry, but instead I breathed. Relief. Deep, raw, overwhelming relief. The twins remained oblivious to the chaos that had threatened them, but I knew that one day, I would tell them the story, carefully, gently, without fear, showing them that courage and love could overcome even the darkest threats. The community, too, learned the truth. Rumors that had swirled around Daniel's odd behavior finally had context. People realized that the distance I had noticed, the secrecy I had resented, had been for protection, not deception. While some criticism lingered, most were awed by the courage it took to face such a threat publicly. Even the neighbors who once whispered about our broken marriage, now looked at me differently. Daniel and I, despite our divorce, had acted together to protect what truly mattered. And the message became clear: family isn't only defined by marriage or proximity, it's defined by action, protection, and love, even in the hardest moments. By the end of that week, the weight of secrecy, fear, and betrayal began to lift. Daniel and I had our differences, yes. But we had also acted as a team when it counted most. Anna returned safely. And most importantly, the twins were safe, happy, and blissfully unaware of how close danger had come. The public consequences were real, yes, but justice had been served without vengeance. The criminals faced accountability, the company faced scrutiny, and the truth, finally, was out in the open. And for the first time in months, I felt something I hadn't allowed myself to feel in a long time: peace. The days after the public fallout were quieter. Not silent, but lighter, in a way that felt almost unfamiliar. The constant tension that had wrapped around my chest like steel bands began to loosen. Every morning, I woke without the sharp sting of fear or the sinking weight of uncertainty. The twins laughed more freely, ran around the house without my anxious glances tracking their every move. I spent a lot of time reflecting on what had happened. On Daniel, on Anna, on the people who had tried to manipulate our lives. On myself. The fear, the betrayal, the secrets, They had all been part of a storm I never wanted to revisit. But storms also leave behind clarity, and that clarity was something I desperately needed. I realized that life wasn't about erasing fear, it was about learning how to navigate it. About standing strong even when every instinct told you to run. And I had learned that I was stronger than I had thought. Daniel and I met for coffee one afternoon, at a small cafe tucked away from the prying eyes of neighbors and reporters. The twins were with Barbara, safe and carefree. Sitting across from him, I noticed how much older and wearier he looked, not just from the months of investigation, but from the weight of responsibility he had carried alone. "I owe you an apology," he said quietly. "For everything. For keeping secrets. For pulling away. For everything." I studied him, searching for sincerity, searching for the man I had once loved. And I found him, not perfect, not unchanged, but human, deeply human, capable of both mistakes and courage. "You were protecting us," I said finally. "Even if you did it in the worst way possible." He nodded, a small, relieved smile flickering. "I know I can't undo the past. But I can, try to be better moving forward. For the kids. For whatever version of us we can have now." I let out a long breath. That's all I can ask for. Anna returned to her normal life slowly, carefully. She had been shaken by the events, but her courage and intelligence had saved us all. I invited her over one evening, and we sat together in my living room, the twins playing quietly nearby. "You were incredible," I told her. "You risked everything to warn me." She smiled faintly, a mixture of relief and humility. "I did what I had to do. I knew someone had to look out for the kids. I just hoped you'd listen." "I did," I said. "Eventually." We laughed softly, a sound so ordinary and comforting it almost felt miraculous after the weeks of terror. Life slowly began to take on a normal rhythm again. I focused on the twins, on building routines that offered them stability and love. Lucas still insisted on extra pickles in his sandwiches. Lily still argued about the proper placement of sparkly decorations on her Legos. And I cherished it all, the mundane, the ordinary, the small moments that once felt so inconsequential. Even Daniel found his place, not as my husband, but as the father of my children who had risked everything to protect them. Our interactions were careful, deliberate, respectful. We were no longer lovers or partners in marriage, but we had become partners in life in a different sense, guardians of the same precious lives. Over time, I noticed a change within myself as well. I no longer felt defined by fear or betrayal. I was defined by resilience. By the choices I had made in the dark, when fear threatened to consume me. By the courage I found in protecting my children, in standing up for what was right, and in trusting myself. I began volunteering at a local organization that helped families facing crises. I spoke to parents about vigilance, about trust, about protecting what matters most. And I discovered that sharing my story, carefully, thoughtfully, was a kind of healing. Others' gratitude and understanding helped me process the fear and loss I had endured. One evening, as the sun dipped low over our quiet backyard, I watched Lily and Lucas chase each other across the grass. Their laughter floated through the air, bright and unburdened. I felt a deep, steady peace settle in my chest. I thought about the storm we had survived, the secrets, the threats, the betrayals. And I realized that life had given me something more valuable than fear: perspective, strength, and a chance to rebuild with clarity and intention. I knew that danger could still exist in the world. That life could still surprise me with moments of fear or heartbreak. But I also knew this: I could face it. I would protect my children. I would act with courage and love. And I would continue to trust myself, even when the path ahead seemed uncertain. Standing there in the fading sunlight, I allowed myself a small, genuine smile. The past couldn't be erased. The scars would remain. But the present, and the future, was mine to shape. And I would shape it with love, resilience, and a fierce determination to protect the ones who mattered most. For the first time in months, I felt whole. Not because life was perfect, but because I had survived. Because I had acted. Because I had learned that even in the darkest moments, courage could light a way forward. And as I watched my children spin in circles on the lawn, I whispered softly to myself, "We are safe. We are together. And we are stronger than fear." Sometimes, life puts us in moments we never imagined, moments where fear and uncertainty threatened to swallow everything we hold dear. I faced that darkness. I faced betrayal, secrets, and the terrifying possibility that my children could be in danger. But I learned something important. Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's moving forward despite it. It's protecting what matters most, even when the world feels like it's against you. It's trusting yourself when no one else seems to understand. And it's finding light in the smallest victories, the laughter of children, the support of friends, the truth finally being revealed. I want you to remember that. When life shakes your foundation, when betrayal stings, or when fear threatens to paralyze you, there is strength inside you. You can act. You can protect. You can survive. Would you have found the courage I did? Would you have faced the fear for the ones you love? Share your thoughts in the comments. I would love to hear your story. If this story touched you, or if you know someone who might need hope in a dark moment, consider subscribing and supporting this channel. Because every story shared reminds us, even in the darkest times, we are never truly alone.